If you were like me, when I first saw a piece of manga in a bookstore or a local comic book shop, my brain instantly, without looking inside, thought of Japanese animated programs kind of like the following.
From days of long ago, from uncharted regions of the universe, comes a legend. The legend of Voltron, defender of the universe. A mighty robot, loved by good, feared by evil. As Voltron's legend grew, peace settled across the galaxy. On planet Earth, a galaxy alliance was formed. Together with the good planets of the solar system, they maintained peace throughout the universe. Until a new horrible menace threatened the galaxy. Voltron was needed once more. This is the story of the super force of space explorers. Specially trained and sent by the Alliance to bring back Voltron, defender of the universe.
Voltron, defenders of the universe.
You gotta love Frank Welker. He's just... that voiceover still holds today as well as it ever did. Even with the curiosity that that a show like Voltron, and even after 2 decades of seeing manga on titles continue to sort of grow everywhere in the U.S., I've never became motivated to really to pick one up. That was until recently when a friend asked me for a recommendation for her manga-obsessed teenage daughter. And, it made me sort of feel immediately shamed because I wasn't able to comply with the request just based on my pure ignorance. And that sort of struck me in my comics-loving heart and set me off on the path to today's topic on manga. So lock yourself in, folks. Time for this week's episode of After Wednesday, Understanding Manga. More right after this music break.
Always remember never to trust me. She said that the first night that she met me. She said there's gonna come a time when I'm gonna have to go with whoever's gonna get me the highest. Ain't gonna be much of conversation if we go to the rest of this. I ain't even been all that much for conservation. I kinda dig these awkward silences. Check those Bounce Brigade videos and see going back and forth. She said with so many skaters. She had the place to herself. She had a couple $100. He had nothing but the number. I like the guy who always answers the door. He always knows exactly what to do in his house for. It ain't gonna be much for all this Hubbard stuff. You know, they don't really turn on that much. I just try so hard not to fall in love, not to concentrate where we go. She knows the words and the walks are running up that hill. That song got scratched into her soul. She never heard that song before. She still got that metaphor. You know a couple of people that have switched voices before. Well, I like the crowds at this really big show. People touching people that they don't even know you. The heavy stuff, it ain't quite at its heaviest. But the shot gets out to suburban Minneapolis. Living up a nickel in the 66. Three skaters or some hood rap shit. Trouble on my town 169. Outside of like inside of heart.
Welcome back. This is After Wednesday, episode Understanding Manga. I'm your host, Jeffrey Hayes, a contributing writer to capelesscrusader.org. If you are unfamiliar with the show or with the website, capelesscrusader.org is your home for entertaining and thoughtful reviews, opinions, and commentary on the comics genre. Also, check out Capeless Crusader's Simpatico website and friends, fanboysinc.com, excuse me. DW and the crew over at FBI keep you up to date on comics entertainment through writing in a network of Fanboy Incorporated podcasts every week. So give those folks a check out. Now, before I get into the topic of manga this evening, at the time of the recording tonight, it's a special night in comics culture because tonight is really preview night at San Diego Comic-Con. And for the uninitiated who may be listening, you know, Comic-Con's grown to be the granddaddy of comics conventions, and today is really the starting point of the next 12 months of comics-related mass media news. San Diego Comic-Con, at its heart, though, is not just about promoting the latest Marvel blockbuster movie or even the hottest indie release. San Diego Comic-Con is about the fans, the people who love the esoteric that the con offer so much of us, and the congregation that it's about in sharing sort of those small esoteric love cultural experiences with others. So hats off to San Diego Comic-Con. Here's hoping for another strong year and a lot, I mean a lot, because there's going to be a lot there, a lot of happy people though. After the break, my Manga Odyssey.
South Paradise was right. Boys and girls in America, they're such a sad time together. Sucking on each other at the demonstration, making sure they make them straight. Crushing one another, colossal expectations, dependent on discipline and sleeping late. The really cool kisser wasn't all that strict at first. She was a damn good dancer, but she wasn't all that great of a girlfriend. He likes to walk, feel about his other on a dehydration. Yeah, but not to crystal clear. Tonight it's like you're stuck between stations. On the radio. The Jibble and Chuck Graham and they took a little walk together. Ended up on Washington all talking to the river. He said, I surrounded myself with doctors and deep thinkers, big heads and soft bodies made for lousy lovers. There was that night that we thought that Chuck Graham could fly. Just so he died. He said, you're pretty good with the words. Words won't save your life, and they didn't, so he died. And he was drunk and exhausted, critically clean and expected. And he loved the golfers, but he hated all the drawn-out winter. He likes them all feeling that he's kind of a dehydration. Must have some kind of pussy, but that last night he had total attention. You know, these Twin City kisses, they sound like clicks and hisses. We all come down and drown in the Mississippi River. We try up and now we crumble in the dust. We get wet and we corrode and now we're covered up in rust. We drink and we try up and now we crumble in the dust. We get wet and we corrode and now we're covered up in rust. She was a really cool kisser and she wasn't all that strict as a Christian. She was a damn good dancer, but she wasn't all that great of a girlfriend. And he likes to walk the other buddy side of all that dehydration. It was such a crystal clear, but tonight it's like you stuck between stations. But all these Twin City kisses, they sound like clicks and hisses. And we all come down and drown.
Welcome back. In trying to understand manga, I had to walk back a little bit, to grab a little historical perspective. Manga's been around for 50 years, but, what does that word mean exactly? Writer Sharon Kinsella in her book Adult Manga explains that while the main contemporary usage of the term manga is a general one, used to describe all kinds of Japanese cartoons, comic strips, manga books, and magazines from the 1950s, manga also attained a second and sort of more specialized usage, which refers to manga as child-oriented, cute, fantastical, and sometimes educational. An excellent example of this is Osamu Tezuka's original Astro Boy run, which you can see by the just looking at it's very cartoony, and very wide-eyed, and sort of really what I always thought about too, watching things like when I'd watch Speed Racer, when they broadcast them very late at night on MTV years and years ago. So as I began doing some more light research on this history of manga, I read a fantastic work called A Drifting Life. It's the autobiographical tale of manga creator Yoshihiro Tatsumi. And in the book, Tatsumi chronicles in detail his beginnings and early career in creating and really attempting to understand his own art form. After reading A Drifting Life and a couple of other texts, I began to understand two things about manga. One, it has a distinctive hierarchical system based on what type of audience and format it's for. For example, there's shonen manga would be for boys or for younger boys, and shoujo manga would be for girls. Second, much like the American monthlies, are what we're used to is just being the regular stuff on the shelf, your DC, your Marvel, your Dark Horse, all of that stuff. Anything that's serialized that comes out every month. The manga stories were often serialized over very long periods of time, in either weekly or bi-weekly or even monthly segments, and it usually popular. Like, here's an example of a shonen, what would be considered a shonen jump, a weekly jump magazine here with One Piece, and I believe Naruto's over there as well. In fact, in thinking about this, the way it was serialized, in dealing with the serialization of manga in Japan, the decision about it is described by, again, writer Sharon Kinsella as that the serialization system exerted an influence on the internal form of manga stories. Stories were written into short action sequences or cycles, which could then be multiplied and extended almost infinitely. And the most popular manga stories have frequently run for over a decade before finally being brought to an end. And when I read that and I started looking at some of these longer pieces, I got to thinking about my own experiences and love of reading Western comics, the last 20 years. And I was most curious about actually reading an example of a long-running shonen manga. In that example when we come back from the break.
It's good to be back in DC.
Pilots, favorite pilots and bells. We spent the night last night up in Beverly Hills. This sexy looks just like Beverly's. I'll see what we got. Yeah. Tights and skirts, and baby skirts inside. Yes, they're shaking up and shaking hot. This sexy looks just like Maddie's side, but she seems shaky for a night. She's in my next rectangle, baby. People call me 1 hour photo. I'll cut some houses, chemicals. Travel around in the window. She said my name's Robbie Roberts, so people call me Robo. I blew it right, I blew right into a chest. Carrot over the counter, just a chest. When I came out of the counter, just a kiss. Such a jacket for a femina.
Psycho eyes and a stuff like that. Alright, right on slacks. And we got cracked. Shoes and socks, or maybe socks and shoes. We showed the night last night up at New One. This sexy looked just like Elizabeth Shue, and we got bruised. She's so nice, very baby. People call me Circuit City. And I'm so appreciative. UBC is down to try system. She's so nice yourself. People call me Nina Simone. Some people call me Hunter Simone. Not Simone, the 80s, the one shot. There was a blockbuster summer. Well, the picture got us through the September. No matter what the movie was all about me and you. They better have noon and half true. It was a cocksucking summer. I spent half the time trying to get paid from our savior. We were switching through the city center. And I did a couple favors for these guys. They look like the Tuscan Raiders.
All right, welcome back. The choice of, or making the choice of a long-running serialized manga, what I was talking about before the break, about trying to choose sort of a shonen manga, or at least by my rudimentary knowledge that I've gained of it, I guess it would be a shonen manga. I'm sure that there's a manga expert out there that can probably, correct me. But choosing it was really difficult, but luckily there was, I remembered when I really got to thinking about it too, there was an interview with Frank Miller, Frank Miller, that I remember him saying something that triggered in my head about a title that he just was absolutely goo-goo over, especially when I thought about it. I believe it was in the interview for the Absolute Ronin, where he mentioned this title, and that title was Lone Wolf and Cub. Now, Lone Wolf and Cub is a samurai tale, and which in itself is sort of a homage to filmmakers like Akira Kurosawa and Sergio Leone. And Lone Wolf and Cub, with double-digit volumes to choose from, it was, kind of maddening for about a minute, and then I just blindly plucked one off the shelf. Seriously, I closed my eyes and I just grabbed, and I pulled the second volume from my local comic book shop shelf. And here's that cover, The Gateless Burial. By the way, you'll notice on these Dark Horse reissues that that's Frank Miller artwork on the covers. They're really cool. What I found in reading this particular manga was a highly cinematic, mature, violent, but yet somehow really moving tale of a man trying to justify his code of ethics, in the world. Deciphering the style of Lone Wolf and Cub, though, was not that difficult. I was really worried that, manga would require me to sort of take on it would take me a while to decode the way that it can be laid out on a page, but not so much. Some of the panel and page curveballs actually brought a fresh enjoyment to this old comic brain of mine, sort of like downloading a new style chunk into my long-term memory for later. So what did I learn, really, with my first tiny toe dip into manga? Well, one, I learned that I really enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I was going to. And while I have a lot of manga still to sort of delve into, I'm happy that I took the plunge. And I'm happy that I read the background materials that I did before reading this first foray into it, and and it was also a really important lesson for me. What I walk away with is that it's a lesson for me in continuing to understand and really embrace the global language of comics. That's it for AW this week, folks. You can read up on my work and others over at capelesscrusader.org. If you like what you heard this week and you want to sort of follow up with a further question and answer, follow me on Twitter. I'm at JLDPROD2002. Please, if you enjoyed the broadcast this week, please share it with your friends and loved ones and what have you via Google Plus or YouTube. Of course, all of the Hangouts instantly upload to YouTube. And I appreciate you hanging in there with me. I am still working out how to do this show exactly in this format. This is just as new for me. So hopefully, as the weeks progress and the months progress, we'll get a little bit tighter with the format and everything, and figuring out everything that we can do here on Google Plus with the show. Getting back though to Twitter, you can follow me at Twitter at JLDPROD2002. And this week's Twitter question for you about the show is, what manga would you recommend if you were asked by a friend? If you want to join that conversation, please do so, and make sure that you tag your response hashtag after Wednesday for me so we can follow up and others can as well. And of course, as always, don't forget to check out capelesscrusader.org. Music for the episode this week, and what we are leaving you with is from one of my favorite bands, the Hold Steady, live in concert from NPR.org. Not that too long ago. You can download that for free over at their NPR Music website. Well, I think that's it for me. I'm Jeffrey Hayes, and until next time, take care.
This song owes its roots, or owes this kind of whole vibe to DC hardcore. Basically, the idea of hardcore when it was good. It's called Stay Positive. And I'm getting back in touch, and it's good feeling. Yeah, it feels pretty good. I get a lot of double takes when I'm coming around the corners. It's mostly pretty nice. Yeah, it's mostly pretty alright, because most kids give me credit being down with it when it was back in the day. Yeah, back when things were different, when the youth of the day and the early 7 seconds taught me some of my most valuable lessons. Come a time when the scene will seem less sunny, it'll probably get druggy, and the kids will seem too skinny. There's gonna come a time when she's gonna have to go with whoever's gonna get her the highest. There's gonna come a time when the true scene leaders will forget where they differ and get big picture. Because these kids in the shows, they'll have kids of their own, and they sing along songs that they are scriptures. We gotta stay positive. We gotta stay positive. Gotta stay positive. Yeah, we gotta stay positive. Chaperone Kravis, the king and the queen. I knew it we'd arrived at the unified scene. All these little lamps in our dreams, well, they were there too. But it's one thing to start it with a positive jam, and it's another thing to see it on through. You know, couldn't have even done this if it wasn't for you. Gotta stay positive. Gotta stay positive. Gotta stay positive.